Mama, why does she think we're bad people? The innocent question of 4-year-old Grace rang out in the gray downpour like a bolt of lightning splitting the Chicago sky. Jayla Jenkins held her daughter close. The thin coat did nothing against the cold, nor could it stop the shiver that came from the humiliation of being cornered. From the gilded steps of the Harper estate, Reagan Langford's voice ripped through the night. "Thief! The cameras caught everything! Get out now!" Her carefully made-up face glowed under the lights, but her eyes were as cold as a blade. Jayla swallowed hard. For 8 months she had worked here like a devoted shadow, dusting every book in the Eleanor Memorial Room, setting each frame back in its exact place, speaking softly to the portrait of the deceased woman as if confiding in an intimate friend. To Jayla, this job was more than a livelihood. It was how she paid her respects to Eleanor Harper, a gentle woman who believed wealth should come with the duty to share. "Mama, I didn't take anything," Grace choked out. Her clear eyes brimmed, reflecting a shame no child should ever bear. Jayla pressed her cheek to her daughter's shoulder, her heart cracking. She knew too well the cruelty of prejudice. She had once been the orphan, measured by suspicious glances, passed over whenever wealthy families chose cuter, easier children to adopt. "Please let me take my little girl and leave," Jayla pleaded. But as she turned, her trembling hand dropped something onto the cold, wet stone. A small metallic clink, barely a sound, yet enough to pierce the silence. A slender silver bracelet, the security lights revealing the engraving. Eleanor. Reagan faltered for a second. This wasn't the piece of jewelry she had just accused Jayla of stealing. It was something else entirely. Plain, simple, and yet seemingly heavy with a deeper story. Jayla bent to pick it up, her hand cupping it as if shielding the greatest secret of her life. "People can take things from you, sweetheart," Jayla whispered, her voice breaking in the rain. "But they will never take love." Grace nodded, a simple faith lighting her innocent eyes. "Mama's heart is still clean." From an upstairs window, Samuel Torres, the Harper's loyal house manager, watched quietly. He knew that bracelet well. He also knew Eleanor had placed it in Jayla's hand at the hospital, a final seal of trust. But tonight, that truth could not yet be revealed. Meanwhile, in a dim wood-paneled room, Gideon Harper, widower, master of the estate, sat by the decanter, ignoring dozens of missed calls from attorney Trinity Morrison. He had been hiding for months, afraid to face Eleanor's last words, afraid to look into the mirror that reflected his guilt. While his wife battled cancer, he had chosen to drown himself in meetings and reports. At the gate, Jayla carried her daughter away, their steps folding into wind and rain. The silver bracelet glowed in her hand like a small ember, fragile but stubborn. No one knew it would be the key to a buried truth, about love, about faith, and about the legacy of a woman no longer in this world. Would you like me to continue with part 2, Jayla's desperate circumstances after losing her job and being evicted, about 1,100 words in the same storyline? 2 mornings later, a wan strip of sunlight fell across a red notice stamped in bold. "Final notice, 72 hours to vacate," lying on the rickety kitchen table. Jayla stared at the line until her eyes blurred with tears. The cramped Southside apartment had never been a haven, but at least it was a roof. Now even this makeshift shelter was slipping away. Grace sat on the floor with a worn-down crayon. She was busy drawing a rainbow, streaks of purple, orange, and green bleeding across the peeling wall, turning it into a naive little gallery. "Look, Mama, the light is dancing," Awkward, her voice chimed, innocently certain that beauty could sprout from broken things. Jayla forced a smile. The child didn't know that rainbow was only a thin veil over the storm massing above her mother's head. The apartment was tidy but patched together. A 3-legged table propped with a stack of old newspapers to stop the wobble. A single bed that sagged in the middle, covered with a quilt Jayla had painstakingly stitched from scraps. A mobile of bottle caps and wire dangling from the ceiling, scattering tiny rainbows when the sun hit. To Grace, it was magic. To Jayla, it was proof that a mother could turn hardship into warmth, so long as love remained. But love couldn't pay the rent. Since the night Reagan accused her of stealing the bracelet, clients had canceled one after another. "Can't trust a thieving maid." The rumor spread fast, as if the whole community agreed to cross out her name. The phone rang only to bring rejections. Messages piled up only to cut ties. In a week, Jayla had nothing. "Mama, are we going to be okay?" Grace asked, eyes still fixed on her rainbow. Jayla bit her lip. No mother wants to hear that question. Yet she smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Of course we are, baby. Mama always finds a way." The answer was taut as a rope stretched over a ravine. Inside, Jayla felt hollowed out. On the nightstand, Marcus's photo still smiled at her, a soft, foolish grin. 3 short years of his life had been snatched away by a rain-soaked night and a skid of tires. The impact had shattered not just the car, but a mother's heart. Jayla had once been a devoted nurse at Chicago General, but after the accident, every code blue siren sent her spiraling. Each time she saw a child in distress, memories of Marcus surged up and drowned her. She left the profession, not for lack of skill, but because the wound inside her wouldn't let her stand in a hospital any longer. She chose cleaning instead. Less pressure, flexible hours for school drop-off and pickup, enough to hide a broken heart behind an apron. But now even that was gone. That night, with Grace asleep, Jayla sat alone under the dim desk lamp, fist closed around the silver bracelet, the only keepsake of Eleanor. The memories unspooled like film in reverse. February at the hospital. Eleanor gaunt, breathing in ragged gas. Her heart stopped. The seconds ticked by. Other nurses murmured, "It's over, stick to protocol." But Jayla didn't stop. She compressed the chest, breathed for her, tears streaming. 12 minutes beyond the book. When Eleanor's heart kicked back, she squeezed Jayla's hand, voice hoarse. "You didn't save me out of duty. You saved me because your heart won't accept defeat." Then she pressed the silver bracelet into Jayla's palm. "It came with my grandmother to America in 1952, with nothing but hope. Now it's yours, because you see a patient as a person, not a case." In long, sleepless hospital nights after, Eleanor spoke of losing a child, of a home echoing without laughter, of a dream of family that never quite came true. Jayla told her about Marcus, about a childhood in foster care, about the exhaustion of constantly proving she wasn't a broken kid. Between 2 women from different worlds, an unseen cord tightened, a sympathy no one else could fully understand. "Promise me," Eleanor said at last, eyes glistening, "if the day ever comes when you despair, let me help, even if I'm already gone." Now that promise rose up again. Jayla looked at the eviction notice, at the bracelet, her chest twisting. She didn't want to beg. Pride, honed in orphanages, where she had once pleaded for affection, urged her to stand against the world. But Grace was different. That child could not lose her shelter, could not taste the isolation of strange rooms, as her mother once had. Late at night, Jayla whispered to Marcus's photo, "I couldn't keep you, but I swear I will protect your sister, at any cost." Across town, in a sleek downtown office, Gideon Harper sat before Eleanor's portrait, refusing to meet her eyes. 17 missed calls from Attorney Trinity still glowed on his screen. He dreaded hearing about the special project Eleanor had set up before she died. He dreaded facing the truth that his wife had spent her last days not only fighting illness, but preparing a future for others, for people he had never thought to see. Samuel Torres, the aging house manager, stepped in and gently reminded him, "Sir, you should take the call. Mrs. Eleanor trusted Jayla Jenkins. In my 15 years here, she never misjudged a soul." Gideon said nothing. He wasn't ready. But miles away in a cramped apartment, Jayla had reached her limit. And the silver bracelet in her hand, together with Eleanor's promise, was urging her to do what pride had long forbidden: seek out Trinity Morrison. The rain outside finally eased, but inside Jayla a different storm gathered. She did not yet know that the decision she was about to make would change not only her and her daughter's lives, but also turn the course of Eleanor Harper's legacy, dragging truth into the light, unmasking betrayal, and forcing a family to face its own conscience. On Monday morning, Jayla held Grace's hand as they walked into Attorney Trinity Morrison's office. The glass tower in downtown Chicago made her feel like a grain of sand wandering into a palace. Grace, by contrast, pressed her face eagerly against the 34th floor window, marveling at the tiny toy-like cars below. Jayla's fingers fumbled with the silver bracelet in her pocket, her heart both trembling and ablaze. Trinity's office radiated sophistication: walnut paneling, thick velvet carpet, and expensive abstract paintings. Jayla hesitated at the threshold, her worn coat damp from rain marking the gulf between rich and poor. Yet Trinity, hair streaked with silver, eyes bright with intelligence, greeted her with unexpected warmth. "Mrs. Eleanor spoke about you constantly during her final months," Trinity began, voice both firm and kind. "She called you the light in her darkness." Jayla shook her head, flustered. "We only met at the hospital. I was just an ordinary nurse." "No," Trinity interrupted, pulling out a thick folder. "Eleanor prepared thoroughly. A charitable foundation worth $150 million, all dedicated to helping single mothers escape poverty, find work, secure homes, and most importantly, reclaim their dignity. And she chose you to lead it." The room fell silent for a long beat. Jayla's breath caught. The number was too vast to fathom. She turned to Grace, who was happily coloring a rainbow on scrap paper. "Me? But why?" Trinity smiled, producing an old photograph. In it, a young nurse held the hand of a weeping teenage girl beside a hospital bed. "This is your mother, Sarah Jenkins. She cared for Eleanor's mother 30 years ago. Eleanor was 16 then, losing her mother in terror. She never forgot the nurse who saved her from the abyss. And when she met you at the hospital, Eleanor knew instantly you were Sarah's daughter, the child of the woman who once rescued her." Jayla clutched the photo, tears spilling. The bond hadn't begun by chance. It had been seeded decades before, across 2 generations. Grace looked up. "Mama, is that why Miss Eleanor gave you the bracelet?" Trinity nodded, handing Jayla a sealed envelope marked with red wax. "And this is Eleanor's letter to you." Jayla opened it. The familiar, delicate handwriting made her chest tighten. "My dearest Jayla, if you are reading this, it means you have found the gift I left behind. I know about Marcus. I know you blame yourself. But child, healing is not preventing death. It is making life meaningful while we can. This foundation is not charity. It is justice. You will help other mothers so they do not fight alone. Remember, you are no thief. You are the keeper of light. With love and faith, Eleanor." Jayla collapsed into tears, hot drops staining the page. Grace climbed into her lap, wiping her mother's face with tiny hands. "Mama, these are happy tears, right?" Jayla hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart, happy tears." That afternoon, at Trinity's invitation, Jayla returned to the Harper estate. Her steps trembled, not from fear of Reagan or the gossip, but from the weight of responsibility. Eleanor hadn't merely entrusted her with a keepsake, but with a legacy heavier than gold. Reagan was waiting on the marble steps, her eyes glinting like knives. "Well, the thief returns, this time with a lawyer to prop her up. How convenient." Jayla lifted her chin, recalling Eleanor's words. "Dignity matters more than dollars." Her voice was calm but resolute. "I return not as a servant, but as the one Eleanor appointed to safeguard her memorial and her foundation. She trusted me." Reagan's laugh was sharp. "Over my dead body." Just then, footsteps echoed down the wooden staircase. Gideon Harper appeared, holding Eleanor's leather journal. His suit was rumpled, hair unkempt, face hollow from sleepless nights. Yet in his eyes flickered something new. Not only grief, but recognition. "Reagan," he said softly but firmly, "I trust my wife." Inside the memorial room, Grace ran to Eleanor's row of music boxes, winding one. Its clear melody filled the air like the laughter of the departed. Jayla followed, brushing her hand against Eleanor's desk, accidentally triggering a hidden compartment. Inside lay letters, photos, and forged financial documents. The numbers, the signatures, all revealed a darker truth. Someone in the family had tried to steal the foundation through fraud, and the handwriting, though clever, lacked the ornate strokes Eleanor had learned at Catholic school. Jayla gripped the stack, unease flooding her. The $150 million fund was more than money. It was Eleanor's life's work, her light, and now that light was under threat of being smothered. Outside the door, Reagan's voice slithered in, whispering to her husband, "Don't worry. The upcoming trial will declare the will invalid. We'll control everything." Jayla glanced at Grace, still lost in the music box's song, and silently vowed, "They will not steal your future." I will guard Eleanor's gift for us, no matter the cost. Across the room, Gideon's gaze fell on the silver bracelet gleaming in Jayla's hand. In that moment, he knew. Eleanor had placed her trust in the right person. But did he have the courage to defend it? Would you like me to continue with part 4? The Harper family's hidden secrets and Jayla's confrontation with Reagan, about 1,100 words. Rain hammered against the Harper estate's tall windows, like an urgent drum. In the memorial room, Eleanor's smiling portraits lined the walls, yet the air was thick with tension. Jayla held Grace close, while Gideon stood by Eleanor's desk, Eleanor's leather journal still in his hand. He flipped through its final pages, swallowing each line. Every word his late wife had written cut like a blade into his guilt-laden heart. Jayla is the keeper of light. Let her continue what I could not finish. The door burst open. Reagan Langford strode in, her heels striking the marble floor like gavel blows. How laughable, she sneered, her voice dripping venom. A worthless maid standing in this sacred room, daring to claim she's Eleanor's chosen heir. Jayla tightened her grip on the silver bracelet, recalling Eleanor's whisper in the hospital. Dignity matters more than dollars. She lifted her chin. Her voice was low but steady. I don't claim anything. Eleanor left the proof. She placed her trust in me. Hi, Reagan's laugh was sharp, cruel. Trust? From a dying woman clouded by morphine? A will written in agony can't decide the fate of the Harper fortune. Gideon slammed the journal on the desk, his voice trembling yet firm. Enough, Reagan. I've read it all. Eleanor was lucid to the end. She clearly named Jayla as the one she trusted. Reagan faltered for a beat but quickly regained her icy poise. Brother-in-law, you're naive. You'd believe a private diary over blood family? Who arranged Eleanor's funeral when you drowned yourself in drink? Who managed Harper Financial while you collapsed? I did. And this is how you repay me? Her words struck Gideon like a blow. He remembered those dark days. Indeed, Reagan had carried burdens he hadn't faced. Yet Eleanor's journal pages glowed in his mind like a lantern in the dark. Reagan was no angel. Grace tugged Jayla's sleeve, her wide eyes lifting innocently. Mama, why does she hate us so much? Jayla bent down, whispering gently. Not all adults know what love means, sweetheart. But we do. Reagan overheard, her lips curling into a smirk. Touching. But remember, Jayla, power doesn't belong to the weak. I have the files ready. In court, you'll be nothing but a poor, single mother with a stained past. Child Protective Services can knock on your door anytime. Jayla froze. Her deepest fear, the loss of Grace as she once lost Marcus, had been dragged out as a weapon. Her hands trembled, but Eleanor's remembered words steadied her. If you despair, let me help. At that moment, Samuel Torres entered, holding a folder. Mr. Gideon, he said, fixing his gaze on Reagan, it's time you saw these. These are the Foundation's account statements from the past 3 months. Withdrawals were made without lawful approval. Reagan's face blanched, but she struck back immediately. A servant meddling in family affairs? You've forgotten your place. Gideon snatched the folder, eyes scanning fast. Unauthorized transfers, forged signatures, accounts traced offshore. His blood ran cold. He lifted his eyes, voice hoarse with rage. Reagan, did you do this? Reagan drew herself up, chin high. And you believe a maid and an old butler over me? Your family? The room thickened with silence. Jayla held Grace's small hand, feeling the child's heartbeat racing. She knew this was only the beginning. Reagan would not retreat. She had prepared a whole campaign to crush Jayla and smother Eleanor's legacy. But Jayla was no longer alone. She had the truth. She had Eleanor's journal. She had Grace's innocent but unyielding gaze. And above all, she bore the responsibility to guard the light Eleanor had entrusted. Outside, the rain poured on. But inside Jayla, a flame had been kindled. The real storm was only beginning, and she vowed she would not let greed and cruelty snuff out that light. Would you like me to continue with part 5? Reagan's schemes escalate, and Jayla faces the most dangerous threats yet, about 1,100 words. That night, the small apartment where Jayla and Grace were temporarily staying in the poor district sank into darkness, lit only by the yellow glow of a street lamp through the window. Jayla sat motionless at the table, Before her lay a small backpack already packed, a few changes of clothes, some biscuits, Grace's beloved teddy bear, and most importantly, the photos she had managed to take of the documents hidden in Eleanor's memorial desk. Those papers were like a sword, her only weapon against Reagan. But they were also like fire. One misstep, and they could consume her and Grace alike. Grace was asleep, her breathing soft, fine hair falling across her forehead. Jayla leaned over, kissed her daughter gently and whispered, "I won't let anyone take you from me." Yet Reagan's threat echoed in her head, cold as steel. "One phone call to Child Protective Services, and you'll lose that girl." The fear was not abstract. Jayla knew exactly what it meant to be pushed into the foster system. The unfamiliar rooms, the suspicious stares, the whispers of damaged child. She had survived it. But Grace deserved a real home, not a life of cold stopovers. By morning, the rumors had already spread like wildfire. Neighbors avoided Jayla's gaze. A church acquaintance sent her a hesitant message. "Is CPS investigating you? People are talking." Jayla understood then. Reagan had made her first move. Meanwhile, in the Harper mansion, Reagan played the game like a chess master. In her private office, she called Derek, her husband, with a voice both sweet and sharp. "You'll sign the affidavit stating Eleanor wasn't of sound mind when she wrote the will. If you don't, I'll expose every shady financial slip you've ever made." Derek, gaunt and weary, dropped his head in shame. He was bound in Reagan's web, his conscience gnawed away, but his will too weak to resist. And Reagan wasn't relying on blackmail alone. She orchestrated a smear campaign against Jayla. Anonymous emails, blog posts about the gold-digging maid, whispers that she had mental instability after her son's death. Each rumor cut into Jayla's already fragile reputation like knives. The breaking point came that afternoon. Jayla's phone rang. A woman's formal, clipped voice spoke. "This is Child Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report about your daughter's safety. We will be making an unannounced inspection this week." The phone slipped from Jayla's hands. Her body shook. The helplessness was the same as the day she lost Marcus in the accident. That unbearable sensation of love being ripped away in an instant. Was she about to lose Grace too? That evening, Samuel Torres appeared at her door, umbrella dripping rain. The old butler looked around the small, worn apartment. Patched furniture, rainbow crayon drawings taped to the walls. He spoke softly. "Mrs. Eleanor once told me, protect the woman with the gentle hands. She is the future of my legacy. I think it's time I helped you." Jayla tried to hold back tears. But Reagan's trap is everywhere. If CPS believes her lies, I'll lose Grace. And Eleanor's foundation will be gone too. Samuel set a thin folder on the table. "These are copies of Reagan's unauthorized withdrawals from the foundation. I've been keeping them for months, waiting for the day Mr. Gideon would open his eyes. Give these to Trinity. She'll know how to turn them into evidence." Jayla's hands trembled as she accepted the file. For the first time, she saw a crack of light in the darkness. But with it came fear. Reagan would not yield. She would strike harder, more viciously, for she never lost without a fight. That night, Jayla tucked Grace into bed and whispered, "We'll fight, sweetheart. Not just for us, but for every mother Eleanor wanted to protect. You will not grow up in fear. You will grow up in the light." Across town, Reagan sat before her mirror, red lips curved into a smile. She was certain that with one more blow, Jayla would collapse. She didn't know Jayla had changed. The grief of losing Marcus, Eleanor's promise, and Grace's innocent eyes had forged her into something new. A fighter. The real storm was rising. And this time, Jayla wasn't just defending. She was ready to strike back. Would you like me to continue with part 6? Gideon faces the truth and must choose between family loyalty and justice. About 1,100 words. In his second-floor study at the Harper estate, the desk lamp cast a dim circle of light over the worn leather journal. Gideon sat frozen, glass of whiskey clenched in his hand yet untouched. For months he had avoided these pages, terrified they would contain Eleanor's reproach for the husband who had abandoned her during illness. But tonight, after all Jayla had endured, he knew he could no longer hide. He opened to March 15th. Eleanor's delicate handwriting flowed across the page, sharp as tears. "Today, I wanted to give up. The pain gnawed at me until every minute felt like hell. I thought of stopping the medication, of slipping away quietly, but Jayla found me in the hospital restroom. She didn't offer cliches or false comfort. She simply sat beside me in silence, then whispered, "Your pain is real, but so is your love. Someone still needs that love to live on." Those words pulled me back from the edge. Gideon's hand trembled. He remembered Eleanor's fragile smile in those final weeks, the faint light in her eyes. While he buried himself in work, it had been Jayla, a stranger, a nurse, who held Eleanor to life. He turned another page. Jayla told me about Marcus, her little boy lost to an accident. I saw why her hands sometimes shook, but I also saw her strength. Grief had not destroyed her heart, it had deepened it. She longs to heal, even through her own scars. I want my legacy in the hands of such a soul. Each word pierced the shell Gideon had worn for 2 years. His shoulders sagged, tears welling. He had believed keeping the company afloat was honoring Eleanor, but Eleanor had seen further. She had chosen sincerity over security, compassion over numbers. A knock sounded gently. Samuel entered, setting another folder on the desk. "Sir, these are copies of Reagan's unauthorized transactions. I've kept them, waiting until you were ready to face the truth." Gideon looked up, voice raw. "Samuel, I was blind for too long. While Eleanor trusted a stranger, I let my own sister-in-law rot the house from within." The old butler laid a steady hand on his shoulder. "Grief makes men close their eyes, sir, but it is time to open them, before Eleanor's light is snuffed out." That night, Gideon scarcely slept. Memories stormed him. Reagan comforting him at the funeral, Derek handling endless paperwork, the family's shoulders he leaned on when he was weakest. Could it be that those very people had betrayed him? At dawn, Gideon summoned Derek. The younger man entered, pale, eyes darting. Gideon slid the folder across the desk. "Explain. These transactions, the forged signatures, the Cayman accounts, all trace back to Reagan. And you?" Derek's lips trembled. "Brother Gideon, I was trapped. Reagan threatened to expose my financial mistakes if I didn't comply. I know I betrayed Eleanor. I hate myself for it, but Reagan won't stop. She wants the foundation, the name, the power. And if no one stops her, she'll destroy Jayla, and little Grace too." Gideon's fist struck the desk. "Eleanor trusted you like a brother, and you betrayed her?" His voice thundered, eyes blazing. Derek wept openly. "I know, and I can't undo it, but I can help you stop her now." That evening, Gideon wandered the dim corridors of the mansion. Outside the memorial room, he heard a soft melody. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." Jayla's voice soothing Grace to sleep in the armchair. The lullaby was the very one Eleanor used to sing in nights of agony. Gideon's throat tightened. Grace spotted him at the doorway, her eyes bright. She ran up, holding out a warm cup of milk. "Mama says warm milk helps sad people sleep better. You drink, okay?" Gideon took it, shaken. The child curled into his lap, then looked up and asked, "Can you be my daddy? Mama says family is love, not just blood." The question tore down every wall Gideon had built. He hugged the little girl tightly, whispering, "Yes, sweetheart, family is love." Later, back in his study, Gideon gazed at Eleanor's portrait. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but I'll make it right. I'll protect what you entrusted." For the first time in 2 years, he breathed freely. The path ahead would be war, against his own kin, against deceit. But it was also his only chance to redeem his failures, to honor Eleanor, and to secure justice for Jayla and countless mothers Eleanor had hoped to save. Would you like me to continue with part 7? Reagan's threat turns into action, CPS intervenes, and Jayla faces losing her daughter, about 1,100 words. On Monday morning, Jayla had just walked Grace to the preschool gate when a silver gray car from Child Protective Services pulled up beside them. The door swung open and 2 uniformed officers stepped out, files in hand. One of them, a woman, spoke with a voice calm yet cutting. "Ms. Jenkins, we've received an anonymous report regarding the care of your daughter. We need to conduct an inspection today." Jayla froze, exactly as Reagan had threatened. Her heart pounded wildly, while Grace's eyes widened in confusion, her small hand gripping her mother's tightly. "What's happening, Mama?" The innocent question pierced Jayla's chest like a knife. She knelt down, kissed Grace's forehead, and whispered, "It's all right, sweetheart. Mama's here." Yet inside, fear surged like the day she lost Marcus in the accident, that helpless terror of watching love being torn away in an instant. Back at the tiny apartment, the CPS officers walked room to room, taking notes. The wobbly table propped with old newspapers, the cracked walls, the sagging bed. To them, it was all evidence waiting to be interpreted against her. Jayla pleaded, "I care for my daughter properly. Grace has food, clothes. She goes to school every day. I just haven't been able to find a better place to live." One officer glanced up, stern. "We've also received information you were accused of theft at your workplace. Is that true?" Jayla's throat closed. She wanted to scream that it was all lies, that Reagan had engineered the slander. But to officials' ears, her words would sound like excuses from the weak. Grace ran forward, wrapping her arms around Jayla's waist. Her eyes brimmed as she cried, "Mama's not bad. Mama gives me breakfast, reads me stories at night. Mama's the best." The child's raw truth softened one officer's expression, but protocol remained. The visit ended with a cold warning. "We'll review everything and determine if temporary protective measures are necessary." When the door shut, Jayla collapsed to the floor, clutching Grace. Tears burned her eyes, but she forced them back. "They won't take you, my love. Mama will fight with everything she has. Treen." Meanwhile, at the Harper estate, Reagan painted her lips crimson and dialed a friend in the legal circuit. Her voice dripped with triumph, masked as concern. "CPS is already involved. With just a few more unfavorable reports, the child will be removed. Once that happens, the single mother has nothing left. And the foundation? It will return to its rightful home, the Harpers." Satisfaction gleamed on her face. She did not notice Samuel in the hallway, overhearing everything. The old butler closed his eyes heavily, recalling Eleanor's final whisper. "Protect her. Protect the child. They are my future." That afternoon, Gideon returned from a board meeting to find Samuel waiting outside his study. "Sir," Samuel said gravely, "CPS has already visited Miss Jenkins. This is no longer a threat. Reagan is acting on it." Gideon gripped Eleanor's journal, staring at her portrait. For the first time, he didn't see accusation in her eyes, only trust. "I have to do what's right," he murmured. "Prepare the car," he ordered firmly. "I'll see Jayla, not as the master of Harper Estate, but as a father." When the apartment door opened, Jayla started at the sight of Gideon. His face was worn, but his gaze carried a steady fire. Grace darted forward, clinging to his legs. "They said they might take me away, but I want to stay with Mama. Can you help us?" Gideon bent down, lifted the child into his arms, holding her with a fortress-like grip. He looked at Jayla, voice resolute. "I've read everything. I know Eleanor trusted you, and now I do too. I will not let anyone tear you apart." In that moment, Jayla felt the fragile weight she had carried for so long lifted, supported by strength she hadn't known she could lean on. Fear still loomed, but hope flared bright within her. The war was not over. Reagan still had her arsenal of schemes, but for the first time, Jayla was no longer alone. Would you like me to continue with part 8? The legal showdown. Gideon, Jayla, and Trinity unite against Reagan in court. About 1,100 words. The morning of the trial, Chicago's sky hung low with heavy gray clouds, as if the entire city was holding its breath. Outside the granite courthouse, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing in rapid bursts. They had come to witness a rare spectacle. The Harper dynasty, long a symbol of wealth and finance, tangled in a bitter dispute over legacy, betrayal, and a single mother's dignity. Jayla stood on the courthouse steps, holding Grace's small hand tightly. She wore a simple light blue dress, modest among the sharp suits and designer coats. Yet her steady gaze made her shine. Beside her was Gideon in a tailored black suit, face stern, and behind them Trinity Morrison, the seasoned attorney, gripping a thick file, their arsenal, Eleanor's will, her handwritten journal, and the financial records Samuel had provided. Across the way, Reagan emerged from a gleaming limousine in a blazing red dress, her presence calculated to provoke. Derek trailed behind, pale and defeated, his eyes fixed on the ground. Reporters whispered, "Who is the true heir? Was Eleanor manipulated in her final days? Can a maid truly be trusted with a $100 million foundation?" Inside the courtroom, Judge Morrison, whom Reagan once bragged was indebted to the family, presided with austere authority, gavel striking to open proceedings. The plaintiff's side, Reagan's, accused Jayla of exploiting the weakness of a dying woman and manipulating her way into control of the foundation. The defense, led by Trinity, stood to uphold Eleanor's will and her trust in Jayla. Reagan rose first, her voice loud, theatrical. "Your Honor, in her last days, Eleanor Harper was not of sound mind. Morphine clouded her judgment. What proof? She left an immense fortune to a mere maid, a woman already accused of theft. Is that the decision of a rational person?" Whispers rippled through the gallery. Jayla bowed her head, her chest tight. Then Trinity approached, her voice calm but cutting. "Your Honor, those claims twist facts into lies. Here is Eleanor's handwritten journal, kept for months, each page dated and signed. She was not only lucid, but deliberate. With the court's permission, I will read one passage." She opened the leather book, her voice ringing clear. "Jayla saved me not only with CPR, but with her refusal to let love die when I was ready to. She has known loss and therefore knows how to heal. I entrust my legacy to her not from pity, but from absolute faith." The room fell silent. The judge nodded slightly while reporters scribbled furiously. Witnesses, Samuel took the stand, steady after 15 years in the Harper household. He described Eleanor's final days, her whispered trust. "Protect the woman with the gentle hands. She is my future." Reagan cut in sharply. "You are just a servant. What motive do you have besides loyalty bought by sentiment?" Samuel answered quietly with sorrowful dignity. "My only motive is to honor Eleanor's trust. I promised her. Today I keep that promise." Then Derek was called. He trembled, his voice breaking. "I confess, I cooperated. Reagan forced me to sign forged papers. She threatened to ruin me if I refused. But I can't watch her slander Eleanor's choice anymore. Here are the emails, the bank statements, the offshore transfers, everything Reagan ordered." The gallery erupted. Reagan shot up, face pale, hissing, "You traitor!" The gavel slammed. "Order in the court!" Jayla's turn. When her moment came, Jayla stepped to the stand, clutching the silver bracelet. Her voice quivered at first, then grew strong. "I am not here to seize wealth. I am here to keep a promise. Eleanor gave me this bracelet, saying, 'Continue my light.' I have lost a child. I know despair. I don't want any other mother to suffer alone. This foundation is not for profit. It is for justice, for dignity." From the front row, Grace suddenly stood, her small voice piercing the silence. "Mom isn't a thief. Mama helps people smile again." Miss Eleanor knew that. Gasps filled the courtroom. Reporters wiped tears. Gideon's heart cracked open as he watched the scene. In Grace's words, he saw Eleanor's light reborn. The verdict. After hours of arguments, the judge struck the gavel, voice firm. "Having reviewed the journal, testimony, and financial evidence, this court rules. Eleanor Harper's will and foundation are fully valid. Jayla Jenkins is appointed director of the foundation under the supervision of the legal board Eleanor herself named. All accusations against Ms. Jenkins are dismissed. Furthermore, an independent investigation will open into Ms. Reagan Langford for forgery and misappropriation of funds." Applause thundered, cameras flashed. Jayla dropped to her knees, hugging Grace tightly. "We're safe now, baby." Reagan sat paralyzed, her face drained of color as her empire of lies collapsed. Derek wept quietly, unshackled at last. Gideon placed a hand on Jayla's shoulder. "Eleanor was right. Her light lives on in you, and in Grace. A new promise." That evening, as they stepped outside into the gray Chicago dusk, Jayla lifted her face to the sky. The clouds were still heavy, yet her heart glowed with certainty. She remembered Eleanor's words. "Healing isn't preventing death. It's making life meaningful while we're here." From now on, she would not just fight for herself and her daughter. She would fight for every mother Eleanor had dreamed of saving. And for the first time, she knew she wasn't walking alone. Gideon, Trinity, Samuel, and a whole community now stood beside her. Would you like me to continue with part 9? Reagan's last desperate counterattack and Jayla's complete triumph? About 1,100 words? The trial was over, but for Reagan, defeat was nothing more than a scratch across her pride. She would not surrender. Cornered beasts fight hardest, and Reagan carried years of venom built up from living in Eleanor's shadow. A desperate plan. That night, in a rented suburban apartment, Reagan sat before her mirror. Her lipstick was smudged, her eyes red with exhaustion. On the table lay forged documents she had prepared, false records claiming Jayla had bribed doctors and faked Eleanor's handwriting. One thought seared through her mind. If the courts would not crush Jayla, the media would. By morning, headlines screamed, "Single mother or master manipulator, shadows behind the Harper Foundation." Anonymous sources, none other than Reagan, fed reporters a steady stream of accusations. Social media exploded with suspicion, the fire of gossip racing across the city. Jayla read the articles, fists clenched until the bracelet cut into her skin. Grace tugged her sleeve, eyes wide with worry. "Mama, they're saying bad things again?" Jayla forced a smile. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Light never loses to darkness. We'll prove the truth." Allies rise. This time, Jayla was not alone. Gideon convened an emergency meeting at Harper Financial. On the table lay a mountain of evidence. Clean ledgers of the foundation, financial audits, and witness testimony. Trinity's voice was sharp as steel. Reagan is playing her final card, character assassination. To fight it, we can't rely only on the courts. We must confront her lies in public with undeniable proof. Samuel nodded and placed a USB drive on the table. This contains Eleanor's last recorded words. She spoke to me in her final days. "If the world doubts Jayla, let Eleanor herself speak." The room fell silent as the recording played. Eleanor's frail but unwavering voice. "Jayla is the light I found when all else was dark. If anything of me remains, it is my absolute faith in her." Gideon closed his eyes, feeling his wife's presence, as if she were in the room again. He spoke firmly. "We'll release it. Eleanor will defend Jayla with her own voice." The public showdown. 3 days later, reporters packed a downtown Chicago ballroom. Reagan arrived in a white dress, feigning innocence, her every move a performance. Taking the podium, she declared with dramatic fervor, "This foundation has been hijacked by an outsider. I have evidence Jayla Jenkins manipulated Eleanor in her weakest moments. The Harper legacy is in danger." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras turned toward Jayla, who stood silently, the silver bracelet gleaming on her wrist. Then she stepped forward, voice calm and resolute. "I don't need long speeches. The only person who deserves to speak the truth, Eleanor Harper, will tell you herself." Trinity pressed play. Eleanor's recorded voice filled the hall. "Jayla saved me not just with her hands, but with her heart. I entrust her with my legacy, not out of pity, but faith. She is the keeper of light." The room froze. Some gasped, some wiped tears. Reporters swung their cameras to Reagan, whose face had drained of color. Her web of lies unraveled in an instant. Gideon rose beside Jayla, his voice thunderous. "Enough, Reagan. You betrayed Eleanor, this family, and this city. Look around you. Law, truth, and conscience have all condemned you. It's over." The collapse of deceit. That evening, federal agents arrived with warrants. Reagan was arrested for evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. Cameras captured her being led away, shrieking, "I was the true heir. You'll regret this." Derek stood apart, tears running down his face. For the first time, he whispered with relief, "Eleanor, you've been vindicated." Jayla carried Grace out of the ballroom. The little girl wrapped her arms around her mother's neck and whispered, "I knew you were telling the truth, Mama. Miss Eleanor knew too." Inside Jayla's chest, the long, suffocating fear melted away. The darkness had roared, but light had endured. A complete victory. 1 week later, the Eleanor Harper Foundation held its first expanded conference. Hundreds of single mothers gathered, their children laughing in the hallways. News outlets that once doubted Jayla now praised her. The light of Eleanor continues through Jayla Jenkins. In the memorial room, Now filled with warmth and laughter instead of silence, Gideon held Grace's hand. With the other, he reached for Jayla's. His voice was low, certain. Eleanor was right. Family is not blood. It is love and trust. Grace looked up, eyes sparkling. So we're a real family now, right, Daddy? Gideon lifted her into his arms, meeting Jayla's gaze. She smiled and nodded. In that moment, the three of them knew. The victory was not only legal, it was love conquering greed, light defeating darkness. Would you like me to continue with part 10? The triumph in Eleanor Harper's eternal legacy, about 1,100 words. An autumn morning in Chicago carried the first chill of the season, yet inside the Beverly Hills ballroom, the air was warm and radiant. A year after being cast out into a cruel October rain, Jayla Jenkins now stood tall at the podium in a navy blue dress, her eyes alight with confidence. Before her sat more than 300 guests, philanthropists, entrepreneurs, journalists, and, most importantly, dozens of single mothers and their children, now thriving because of the foundation's work. On the towering screen behind her glowed the image of Eleanor Harper, her gentle smile blessing the moment. Jayla drew a steady breath and began. A year ago, my daughter and I were turned away at the gates of the Harper estate, accused of being thieves. We were told we didn't belong, but Eleanor Harper planted a seed in my heart, the belief that no matter how poor, how broken, everyone deserves love and dignity. Today I stand here, not as someone rescued, but as someone chosen to carry her light forward. The hall fell silent. No grand flourishes, only words heavy with truth, carved into every listener's memory. Gideon sat in the front row, his hand resting on Grace's. The little girl, dressed in a blue dress like her mother's, looked up proudly, watching her mama shine like a beacon. The fruits of 1 year. In its first year, the Eleanor Harper Foundation had transformed over 600 lives. Hundreds of single mothers secured safe housing, escaping violence. Job training programs gave them stable employment. Children once familiar with hunger and fear now carried new school bags and unbroken dreams. Jayla told the story of Carla, a mother of 2 who fled abuse. Through the foundation, she found emergency shelter, therapy, and design training. Today, Carla runs her own small business and supports her children with her creativity. When she stepped on stage to embrace Jayla, tears streaming, the hall thundered with applause. That, Jayla said, voice thick with emotion, is the legacy Eleanor meant to leave behind. Not wealth, but reborn lives. And Diddy, Grace, the small flame that lit hearts. As the event drew to a close, Grace suddenly climbed onto a chair, holding up a piece of colored paper. I have something to say, too. Laughter rippled warmly through the crowd, but then hush fell as her childlike voice rang clear. Miss Eleanor told me in a dream, love doesn't disappear, it only changes shape. I believe it's true. Because of Mama, Daddy, and this foundation, I see so many new smiles. This is my picture, 3 people under a rainbow, with hearts in their hands. That's our family, and all the moms and kids here are part of it too. Everyone has light. Applause burst like a wave. Some executives wiped their eyes, reporters forgot to take notes. Gideon walked up, scooping Grace into his arms, kissing her forehead. The sight of a man once hollowed by grief, now radiant as a father, sealed the truth of Eleanor's vision. Love makes families. Love beyond death. That night, after the gala ended, Jayla, Gideon, and Grace returned to the Harper estate. The memorial room, once heavy with silence, now brimmed with life. Samuel poured tea while Trinity read a newly found letter Eleanor had left hidden in a music box. In Eleanor's familiar hand, if doubt remains, let them see this. Jayla is not a savior, but a proof. Proof that my love, my mother's love, the love of women long gone, still lives in each act of kindness. When family is chosen not by blood but by goodness, our light will never go out. Silence filled the room. Jayla touched the bracelet, tears shining but no longer bitter. Eleanor has never left us, she whispered. A legacy that lasts years later, the foundation expanded nationwide, touching thousands of families. But Jayla's greatest victory was not in statistics or accolades. It was in the everyday moments. Grace's laughter as she learned to write, Gideon setting aside his work to cook dinner, Samuel telling stories by lamplight. They lived by one refrain: family is a choice, not an accident. Eleanor, through love and vision, had taught them this truth. As Chicago's skyline lit up with 1,000 stars of glass and steel, Jayla held Grace by the window and whispered, "See, Eleanor's still here, in those lights, in every smile we share." Grace nodded, her voice certain. "Love is magic. It makes broken things whole again." Gideon wrapped his arms around them both, and in that embrace, Jayla knew. They had crossed out of darkness into triumph. The triumph of Eleanor's light, burning eternal, passed from one generation to the next.